Delighted to be hosting this roundtable this morning. Just a few quick points from me on how things will work today so that we can have a smooth as possible session this morning before I hand over to our two hosts. So we're going to kick off with some brief introductions from our two hosts today. Tomer Epstein with the Israeli Exports and International Cooperation Institute, who is our trend host. So Tomer is going to be walking us through the trend of the Internet of Things, wearables and AI, obviously quite a big and deep topic, so there's plenty to be getting our teeth into. And then after the presentation from Tomer, handing over to Paul Kitson with PwC, who's also going to introduce himself and then talk through the impact of this sort of trend of IoT, wearables and AI on health span and longevity. After that, we'll have a group discussion and there'll be some questions put to all of you for the round table. So for now, aside from the hosts, if I could ask everyone to keep their microphones on mute until we get to the sort of more interactive discussion part, just so that we have the clearest audio. If you do have a question, on the right-hand side, there is the opportunity to raise your hand. So if you click on the participants section, and you can raise your hand to indicate you have a question. Alternatively, you can use the reactions section down here on the bottom right hand of your screen. And if you do a little thumbs up, it'll let me know that you have a question that you'd like to put to the group or to raise and discuss. And the other alternative is if you have a private question that you wanted to send to me, you can do that in the chat function. You can send me a private message and then we can put that to the group. I'll put this all in the chat myself now, all of those points, so that everyone can sort of see those as well. But for now, delighted to hand you over to our trend host for the day, Tomer Epstein. So Tomer, the room is yours.
Thank you very much, Josh. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining. I will now share my screen. Josh, can you please allow that? Great, now it works. Okay, perfect. So thank you all for joining our roundtable. It's a real pleasure for me to participate. My name is Tomer Epstein, and I lead healthcare at the Israel Expert Institute. It's a government entity that aims to accelerate companies' commercial entry to the global healthcare markets. So let's dive into. So you probably heard a lot the past few days about the demand that is growing and pushing us. The aging population. So the demand is driven by a combination of unstoppable forces. The population, of course, is aging. The number of chronic diseases of patients is rising. There is a change in patient expectation, a shift in the lifestyle choices, and the healthcare spending is simply not keeping up. Our healthcare system will struggle to remain sustainable. And also there is a huge growing need of medical workforce, and there is a projected shortfall of about 10 million physicians for 2030. So building a process based on telemedicine, artificial intelligence, has really the potential to revolutionize healthcare and help address some of those challenges. It will affect all of the healthcare stakeholders, including the providers, the insurers, the medical staff, and also the patients. And telemedicine is using technologies like wearables, IoT, and communication as an infrastructure for care services, able to collect vast amount of clinical and medical processes data, which opens the possibilities for analytics and machine learning. And we are seeing telemedicine taking over the medical routine. And now during COVID, we see it even more than before. The percentage of telemedicine usage is rising. The percentage of investment in telemedicine is rising as well. And applications like tele-ICU, chronic disease management, tele-rehabilitation, we are able to provide the continuity of care for the community and also for the rural areas. And combining the collected data with the powerful algorithms, which is artificial intelligence, can transform how care is delivered. It can support improvement in care outcomes, patient experience, and access to healthcare services. It can also increase the productivity and the efficiency of care delivery and allow our healthcare system to provide more and better care to more people. It can help improve the experience of healthcare practitioners, enabling them to spend more time in direct with the patient, which is something that we're lacking of these days. So more empathy from our medical teams. And of course, that it can result in reducing the burnout that we're seeing that is rising as well. It can also support a faster delivery of care, mainly by accelerating the diagnostics time. And of course, help the healthcare system to manage the population at a more proactively and predictive way. And today, innovative technologies that uses wearables, IoT, and AI are taking over the world. And I would like to share a few technology examples from Israel. Although it's a small country, but has an incredible industry for digital health and medical devices. So we have Title Care, a small portable medical device for primary care exam, testing different vital signs parameters, an automatic fall detection device that uses RF radio frequency device with no camera to protect the user's privacy, an app that turns music into therapy and can reduce the loneliness in the elderly population, medical grade monitoring platform for vital signs monitor, including blood pressure, heart rate variability, and a wearable and a VR platform for rehabilitation, cognitive improvement, stress management, and more, wearable for fall prevention and detection for the elderly, an online service for language and movement rehabilitation that can be used for stroke patients, a contact-free monitoring solution for hospital, nursing homes, and home care, a robot, a social companion that helps to cope with loneliness, neuromodulation technology as an antidepressant without the use of drugs, digital hearing platform to perform hearing tests from a distance, AI emotion monitoring solution uses the wearables that we are all using on a daily basis, and that can help us manage stress and anxiety, boost productivity, and manage a state of health. And even using our own voice for analytics for disease diagnostics, such as COPD or cardiac condition and depression. So we are seeing a lot of technologies today that are really becoming a part of our lives and becoming a part of our environment, that the main goal is, of course, to create an impact. So we could all aim for a better and healthier and enjoyable living journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Tomer. I'm just going to admit a couple of other people who have just joined as well. And then, yes, hand you over to Paul, who's going to, take you through, I guess, the impact side of the debate. So, Paul, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Josh. I'm not going to say too much because I'm really keen to get into some sort of broader discussion, and I'm conscious we've only got till 11. But just by way of sort of a very short interlude into that, so I'm Paul Kitson, partner at PwC. My day job is actually working with, well, historically UK defined benefit pension funds, who obviously think a lot about and worry a lot about how long people live, because it's a major kind of financial driver. As part of that work, I've sort of stumbled into this world of thinking about kind of longevity and the impact technology may have, and clearly, some great stuff Tomer was talking about there, but I'm sure, as we all know, that is still just the kind of tip of the iceberg in terms of technology. What I've been thinking a little bit about, and obviously keen to sort of get others' thoughts and questions, is how do we actually translate some of this stuff into what might this actually mean for thinking about how long people are going to live in the future? And this obviously is a slightly odd discussion at the moment, given everything that's going on in COVID, but kind of how do we bring some sense and science to that? And in fact, that's where, interestingly, I think technology can kind of play a key as well. So actually, not only is AI, as Thomas highlights, going to be a potential impact and driver of health tech and extending life and hopefully extending good quality of life, is AI possibly the answer to understanding how some of these technologies may impact? So we've been doing some work thinking about things like weak signal monitoring and playing with some of the AI and NLP programs that we have available to us at PwC around thinking, what are the major gateways for these technologies kind of actually unlocking extensions in life? What needs to happen in terms of things like funding, regulation, and all of that stuff? And in fact, is kind of AI part of the answer to understanding that? The ability to triangulate huge data sources, you know, be it patent filing, be it kind of testing, other data sources that are available to actually kind of bring some science to, you know, are these technologies just, you know, pipe dreams, or are they actually going to impact on how long we will live kind of day to day? So let me say no more than that, but I'm really interested in this discussion going both in the direction of kind of the technologies, but also then how we think about using technology to understand their kind of impact. So Josh, I think at this juncture is the idea we sort of open it up live now for people to raise any observations, questions they may have for Tom or myself or the wider group.
Yes, indeed. So there is either the chat function to ask questions, or indeed if you have a question or a point you'd like to raise, you can, in the participants section, raise your hand, and that'll sort of let us know you have something to say, or indeed with the reactions button in the bottom right, if you put your thumbs up like that, everyone will be able to see that you have something you'd like to discuss. So yeah, I guess we have Dexter now, actually, so I'll hand over to Dexter.
Hi, morning everyone. Really interesting take on this from Toma, because what people have done in Israel, it's really demonstrated how you can really engage with tech, get the skills base in together to solve some of these problems. So I think it's a really good example to look to. My specific bit on this is I think that the use of AI, it is, you know, primarily as good as the data that you get. And I think having quality data coming in is something that's really important. So I think the IoT devices that we have in play right now, they're really useful for getting that data so that we can get better insights. But just in terms of like how we actually use that as a catalyst for improving the quality of life for people in, you know, whatever point of the life stage that they're at, it's something that we've had a lot of thinking about. I'm on the APPG for longevity, and I'm also an academic. I work at UCL doing dementia research, and I'm also a fintech founder of Calgera, and Calgera, it analyzes financial behavior to pick up signals of financial vulnerability. So we're really hot on this. But some key bits on digital inclusion, I think, need to be brought into the mix here, because, you know, people don't necessarily have to know what's necessarily happening with the tech, but they need to be able to trust it. And bringing in the question of data ethics within this frame, it's something that's really important in building that trust and having the transparency and really, you know, making sure that what we're doing, it is adding value. And, you know, how are we measuring that value? And, you know, what unintended consequences should we be looking out in terms of discrimination and you know, other bits that are tricky? Because at the end of the day, I see this technology shift as a way of us building resilience, and building resilience throughout your life is something that's really important. And if you can start building that at middle age, then it really helps when you're older. So I think the lessons from COVID are really important for us to learn from, because, you know, the ability to withstand a shock like this, it's, you know, a resilience that we're building into the systems by using AI. So I just wanted to raise that at this point, because we need to make sure that people have the skills in order to engage with this, and we just need to find out what those skills are so that we can develop them.
Thanks, Dexter. I mean, sorry, Eric, I think you were raised a point.
Yes, we have Eric. We also have Bruce, who's been waiting as well. So
yeah, why don't Bruce, you go first? I saw your thumb first.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. We believe that AI can help not as well longevity, yes, but healthy aging as well. Our memory lane games startup is building apps for dementia patients, remote dementia therapy, and games for socially isolated seniors. And we take GDPR compliant cognition levels provided by families, a dozen other data points to predict optimal gameplay by cognition levels. And I think that kind of application of AI is going to create wonderful benefits. As Derek was saying, I think to be able to apply technology to everyone is absolutely critical, including mild to moderate dementia patients. And just one step farther, we're seeing down the road, our plans are to take our reminiscence therapy products into wearables that can be triggered by healthcare professionals as anxiety starts to rise as an intervention. So we're seeing a number of different applications of this, but really on healthy aging, not just longevity.
I'll dive in now, I guess, if that's all right. Okay, so thanks for inviting me. Interesting presentation, Tomer, and Paul, thanks for coordinating us today. I was wondering where the conversation's focus was going to be. I mean, Paul, you asked a question about how close is this to market. There is a question about, Dexter brought up the question about data and the value of the data that we've got. We're generating lots of data. The insights and the so what of that data is being demonstrated by people on this call, Bruce and Dexter, and I'm sure there's others as well. Tomer showed us several in the presentation. I want to bring into the conversation the user into this. So I organize the Aging 2.0 community here in the UK, a member of the All-Party Parliamentary Group and the former director of the Industrial Strategy Fund, Healthy Aging. And from that experience, I found technology is not the problem. There's lots of technology out there. It's finding the problem or a solution to the problem as opposed to a solution finding a problem. And I think COVID-19 has really highlighted clinicians have been hesitant to use technology for a variety of reasons, and they now have been forced to use technology. There was a recent survey by the General College of Practitioners that said that since COVID-19 lockdown hit here in the UK, 3 out of 4 consultations, GP consultations, are remote, and a lot of them are using it for the first time, and I think you can't unring the bell. You know, it's happening. They're learning how to use it, and I think it's really interesting to see that sort of impact. You know, we've got great entrepreneurs on this call who are really struggling to get traction because of resistance in the system. And we really need to support our entrepreneurs to get adoption in the system because it can drive impact. And I'm thrilled with the fact that barriers are dropping. You know, we are seeing adoption in weeks where it took years prior to this. There's another entrepreneur who's unfortunately not on this call, but she had a year's worth of sales in the first 7 days of lockdown. You know, it's gone from a sideshow to the main show, and I think we need to address the needs of clinicians and the users here. I just want to throw that out. You know, go to where you were going, Paul, in terms of how close are we having an impact here, and I think it's supporting the users and clinicians in adoption of this.
Eric, just really quickly, that's really, really important what you've said. So at UCLH, we had an electronic health record system installed last year. And everyone was like, oh, I don't know if I want to use this. And then now COVID hit, everyone is like, thank goodness we install this system, because we can now talk to our patients remotely and do our consultations. And I think this has proven the use case for digitalization in healthcare.
May I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Hi,
Yes, go ahead.
Eric Kerry, Chairman of Nottinghamshire County Council Pension Fund, but I also have a history in housing, Chairman of Housing for local authority. So we have sheltered accommodation, all that kind of stuff. So all this fits into a much wider thing. It really is very important. I think, Dexter, you made some really great points. I think everybody's made great points. The barriers to this now, COVID's changed, it's changed the rules. We've got a massive opportunity here to change to the future. And as a chairman of a pension fund, that's a dichotomy for me, because people living longer, that's my liabilities going up. So I think the other side of it is that if we can get investment right, if we can get investment returns from making this work and giving benefits in terms of adding value, then I think there's a win-win there. So I think that's really, really, really important. The insights thing, this is being used right now. I've seen it in the States, in America, in Walmart, Walgreens and stuff. They're using this kind of stuff, AI, in consumer insights, in customer insights, making customer journeys really important. So companies now at the forefront, retailers at the forefront of their industry, are starting to use this so that they remain at the cutting edge of customer journeys, and therefore being more viable. And that's actually also important in this position of COVID, where retail is going to really struggle. So really interesting. I think data security worries people. I think that personal freedom worries people. But the last point I'd like to make, and sorry for going on, but longevity does not begin in later life. If we're going to make a real difference, it's about the whole life journey. So the younger we can get people to adopt these new technologies, the more we can help them getting into bad healthcare pathways. So that's really what I have to say.
Fantastic, thanks, Eric. No current raised hands in the participants, but I guess Paul or Thomas, do you have any, I guess, follow-up or comments to, I guess, any of the points made from Bruce, Eric, or Eric Kerry, two Erics on the call, or I guess any other sort of questions you might have for the group?
You want to go? You want to go ahead?
I've got some thoughts, but go on, Tommy. You go first, please.
Yeah, so definitely very good points that you guys raised, and also we can see it. We can divide it also into COVID really changed everything, but we can actually divide the period for before, during, and after. And from the point of view of Israel, we're actually starting to think of our post-COVID deal with the situation, and also we're talking with the technology companies, and we're trying to see where exactly we can fit in them within the global markets, and definitely a slower pace for some of them, but explosion for others. So as Eric mentioned, there are a few companies that we're in contact with have actually did sales the past 2 months that they haven't did in 3 years. So crazy opportunity for some, but lagging for some others. And at the post-COVID, now that we're in Israel, in some countries in the US, they're not yet there, but definitely we need to think of how to strategize our market access now at this area. And the technologies that I mentioned are suitable for human longevity, and not just for COVID, dealing with COVID, but of course some of those applications that I mentioned also have an explosion of sales and implementation, but others that are not at the front of the situations are still trying to make the best out of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Tom. I'm really interested in this sort of data security point and the use of data, because I think, if anything, in the UK, certainly Europe, certainly, we've sort of had a bit of a moratorium out about how we kind of use data, and the whole industry has been a little bit, kind of nervous, and even things like some of the genetic data that's been available for a long time, and how do we use that kind of both for research, but also does that then creep into kind of insurance and cost? And I think this is huge, and it's but it's very different. I see very different attitudes to kind of data security and use of data. And I'm going to get my countries mixed up now, but having investigated longevity trends in Denmark, I think it is, you can get in Denmark, you can basically get all medications that people are prescribed kind of in the public domain. You can find out what drugs your neighbor is buying from the pharmacy in Denmark. That information is open and available, and of course it's led an incredibly rich data source for kind of research. And but if you say that to people in the UK, the thought that what drugs are being prescribed would be publicly available, I mean, clearly people wouldn't want to go that far in the UK. So I mean, I think we've got to get we've just got to get this absolutely right. We've got to demonstrate in some of the ways you're talking about this being a force for good, and give people confidence about how it's used, rather than a force for evil. And not that these things are linked, but of course people continue to read, for example, in the newspapers just the other day about EasyJet having been scammed out of millions of credit card details. So people are nervous about data and wearables and all of this stuff. So I'm probably not adding much to the conversation other than saying I think we've just got to have a really transparent and big discussion about this, and what the rules are, and how this works globally. Because it's a really challenging area, and if we get it wrong, it will be a barrier to all of this. If we get it right, it can open the floodgates. And as several have observed, COVID is a great opportunity, I think, to demonstrate how, when we need to, this is a force for good. If anyone has any sort of additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Bruce has a question.
Yeah, two quick comments on that. For us as a digital health startup, dementia therapy, we've raised more money since lockdown than before. It's been tremendous. Partnerships have stepped up. It's been a real eye opener for us, just a wonderful motivator for us. But I think some of the other things I saw from what Tomer's early presentation showed is that there's a whole bunch of companies that are tracking some things that we never tracked before. So mood and anxiety remotely. Some of those kind of things are going to provide incredible interventions now that we can use to improve outcomes on depression and even cognitive skills as well. So I'm really pleased about those kind of applications impacting us today. And I think that those things are happening now. It's not, much of yesterday's conference was talking about biotech and these are 5, 10, 15-year funds. Here we can make a difference next year, and I'm really excited about.
Paul, I'll build on your comment about the data and where it is. I mean, I think here in the UK, we, despite my accent, I've been here 22 years, so have a bit of insight in terms of what's happened with data for the past, call it 24 years. Looking at what's happening, NHS is almost a religion here, but they've really screwed up the way data is collected, and we've tried it on a couple of occasions, and I think we're moved to a model where people will own their own data more than they have in the past. There's an opt-in, opt-out approach that NHS is taking now. Dexter will know more about this than I will, but essentially, we have an amazing opportunity to drive innovation here in the UK with the data that we have. It's a competitive advantage for the UK over places like the US. I don't know about Israel, but in terms of information and using that information to the benefit of the overall community, the UK has an amazing opportunity. And Sir John Bell wrote a strategy on this that the industrial strategy has adopted. And there's a lot happening in the NHS space. What we have to do is earn people's trust. Cambridge Analytica and Facebook have done a lot of damage in that space. But so has MyCare.data. So earning people's trust is the fundamental aspect of it, and doing it one step at a time. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that.
I think it's an interesting point, Eric, because I know that the common thread here is trust really in the use of data, and just sort of like looking through some of the bits about where we're actually going and the intention of where we would like to see the world in the short, medium, and longer term. The government in terms of digital inclusion, because you do kind of need to have that in order for people to see the use of things. That was put out in 2014, and I don't really. I think it's made an impact, but I just don't know. Just in terms of everyone else on the call, in terms of those bits that they define, so access, skills, motivation, and trust. I know this is more so about public institutions and how they use digital anything. And just wonder if there's anything that we can learn from the experience in Israel, Toma, in terms of how we could actually make this a lot more fit for purpose in this case, because people write documents and things, and Paul, I think you probably might have some insight into this in terms of how it relates to pensions. But I just thought it would be interesting just to learn from that experience in Israel.
So Israel is actually quite unique in the usage of data. Of course, we all know that the data is the key to really bring healthcare to the next level. But the case in Israel is that we have an HMO. We have actually 4 HMOs that provide community service for the community of Israel. So they started collecting data and using EMR, electronic medical record, for more than 25 years ago. So there's 4 million data sets of people for the past 25 years. So this is very unique in comparison to other countries. And they started it quite early and they kept on going. So the data that is being drawn is also within the community connected to the hospital. So you have also the pediatrics, the general practitioners, and also what happens actually after that if there's a more serious case or ICU or different surgical procedure. So all of this data has been accumulated for quite some time now. And last year, our government actually issued a national plan for digital health. They invested about $300 million to really bring Israel to the forefront regarding the usage of digital health technologies and mainly data. So what they did is actually they're doing a full-on infrastructure to mainstream all the data. So it will be divided by codes. So each procedure will be divided into code, because we all know that physicians write differently and the algorithms cannot identify the message behind it. So they're going to unify all the data, as Paul mentioned as well. So data is of course important, but if it's not a clean data that you can work with, it's basically doesn't worth anything. So this is the main purpose, the main goal now that they are doing. And the goal is that projected for the next 5 years now, it's something that should be implemented within all the hospitals and also the HMOs. And also another interesting thing is that they want to do that the Ministry of Health will be the main regulator for data. Maybe it's something that can be controlled because Israel is a small country. But as for now, each hospital or each HMO is controlling its own data. So this is something that is happening at the moment, but we're probably going to see differences within that once they will have unified data. So maybe perhaps the Ministry of Health, one entity, will actually control all the data. I'm not sure that this is something good or not, as we're talking about all the privacy issues and that we aren't able to count and have confidence within the organization and our government and the usage of data. I don't know, but we'll probably see in a few years. So this is kind of the case, the landscape in Israel.
Thanks, Thomas. As Eric suggested, he said it might be useful to hear from everyone on the call, just to hear a bit of background. We've obviously got Paul and Thomas' background we've heard from, and Bruce from a digital health company, and two Eric's and sort of government and pension funds, and Dexter, of course. But perhaps, I don't know, Caroline or Alessandro or Peter, or to send the others on the call, would any of you be open to making any comments here and sharing a bit about your backgrounds? Got a little nod there from Caroline, if you're open to sharing.
Yeah, sure. Hi. My name is Caroline Roberts. I'm Longevity Risk Manager at the Phoenix Group, which is a large consolidator of life and pension funds. So really my interest and the reason I joined this call today is really just to kind of to find out what is out there, and what is there anything out there that is likely to start extending life, really, because I maintain models, particularly looking at cause of death, projections by different causes of death. So really making sure that we if there's something coming along that is going to mean that maybe dementia patients are living for longer, so that it just means that we can then model all this appropriately, really. So really just interested in listening to what is out there, and yeah, so if you think that you've got some great things coming along that's going to make everyone live for another couple of years, let me know, because I need to change my models.
Alessandro, would you be open to sharing a bit about your background in an organization?
So I'm Alessandro Verso. I'm co-founder of YourMD, which is a personal health assistant. And it's quite different from, let's say, other players like Babylon, in that we do not believe that telemedicine is the ultimate solution. Telemedicine helps, but telemedicine is still limited by constraints of not having enough doctors. So telemedicine will make consultations easier, will make sure that people don't have to travel to a GP practice, but still a doctor has 10 minutes to see a patient, nothing changes. Whereas, and you cannot really change the supply of doctors. We know that is a constraint. So what we believe is in helping demand, and helping the demand of users or patients by managing that demand in a better way. So we have created a chatbot that, first of all, is helping people with their queries, because actually a lot of queries do not require a visit to a GP. For those queries, we provide the relevant information. And then and indeed there are cases where you still go to see a doctor, but not only a doctor, you may need another kind of referral. Then we have created an AI-driven marketplace where people, for instance, can download apps. If they have hearing problems, they can download Mimi that helps them with their hearing, or indeed any of the services that Tomer has identified can be recommended by an AI-driven marketplace, because an Amazon of healthcare still does not exist. So I just wanted to make the point that it seems that a lot of initiatives are doctor-driven. And I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with that. We have a lot of doctors at YourMD, so everything that we do is indeed approved by doctors. But fundamentally, there is such an increase in demand that I think we need to tackle demand first to make sure that doctors also have more time to do the excellent job that they do in the best possible way.
Thanks, Alessandro. I think Eric Carey had a question that he wanted to respond to. Eric?
Yes, thank you very much. That was really interesting from the doctor's perspective there. I think, first of all, I believe if people need doctors, then that's something for government societies to sort out and to make that happen. But we have a chicken and egg thing here, because I mean there are already systems in the UK. I think a company called Care Is, actually from Nottingham, where I live, who provide GPs with care pathways. They tied into the National Health N1 backbone, N2 or whatever it is, backbone system. I'm not a techie, so I can't give you the detail of that, but it ties into the health service data sets. And a GP can have this care pathway on his screen and help people improve their life and lifestyles, whatever. So there is stuff to make things happen. And if we can get that right, as well as the artificial intelligence and the data to get better care pathways, in the long term, actually, will help more people with the same amount of doctors or even less. I think that's it. We've got to do something now and have a really long-term strategy so that everybody benefits and gains from this whole thing. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. Peter, I've seen you popping on the video a couple of times. I wonder if you might be perhaps open to sort of sharing a bit about yourself and your background as well.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, guys. First of all, thanks for the really useful insights earlier on. I'm a co-founder along with Bruce Elliott of Memory Lane Games. My background is a computer scientist from the 80s, moved into finance. And then I found a few years ago, from a personal level, that when my mother was diagnosed with vascular dementia, that there was a whole new world opening up for her and for me. And my background in business and computing, I looked at it and I thought there's really not much out there. So I was chatting about it with Bruce a few years ago, and I think the simplicity of what we're looking at in relation to reminiscence and family memories, as everyone will know, quite often as seniors age, short-term memory goes, but the older memories, the more deep-seated memories are there. And if you can tap into those memories, you can have a great time. So I'm quite selfish. I mean, I'm doing the business I'm doing with Bruce to help my mum, and if we can help other mums and dads along the way. But technology, the way I look at technology is the language has improved, the technology's improved, the way we use them improve, but we just need to make them as simple as possible. So our focus is on simplicity and enjoying things.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. I know we have a couple of others on the call as well, Karen and Ibtisam, if you are open to sharing a little bit, perhaps, sort of raise your hand or turn on your camera or something to let us know. Otherwise, we'll, I guess, continue on. I guess, Paul, perhaps a few little sort of pieces there from a few different sides. Any sort of follow-up comments on anything that was mentioned there?
I mean, I was really interested. I mean, and this is just sort of personally, actually found it really interesting that some of the comments made about the increase in funding that people have achieved since we've gone into COVID. I suppose I'm interested in thoughts as to, is that universal? Have there sort of been winners and losers of different technologies in that sort of faster adoption? And I suppose a good question for me is how do we really make sure we take the good stuff, the positives of COVID, and look for opportunities and take that out? So I'm interested in any kind of thoughts on that as well.
I think Eric Killstrom had his thumb up there.
Yeah, there's two Eric K's. Yeah, so Paul, I organize a innovation network here in the UK. It's a voluntary network called Aging 2.0, and we have hundreds of startups in our community, and Dexter's one of our stars. Forgive me, Bruce and Peter, for not having come across you guys, or Alessandro, but hopefully you'll
We're from the Isle of Man.
Very good. Right. Well, you must get involved. We're a broad church. But to your question, Paul, it hasn't been, and I think Tomer highlighted this earlier, I don't want to say winners and losers. There are people who were well positioned, and there were people who were on the outside looking in. When formal care went into lockdown, you were either in the care facility or in the domiciliary care facility services, or you were out. There was no going in once things were in lockdown. So it was kind of binary. You'd invested a lot of time and you were in the right place at the right time and you had the right offering. Or you've got a great service that could flourish after. So I was interested in Tomer's comment about, before, during, and after. And I think, the world's changed. This is a 9/11 moment. We're not going back to where we were before. And so you can see it in the workplace. Real estate will certainly get hit a lot harder, but remote care is here to stay. And adoption and comfortable level of comfort with this kind of solution is better than it was before. So I think there's an uptick in this particular market. let me bring in Caroline's comment real quick about will this extend life? I think there's two different elements of this. There are people who are in lockdown who are helping with mental well-being. Then there Alessandro's solution around looking at actual clinical support. You know, there's really interesting solutions around how do you support somebody once they actually have a diagnosis? Because right now, NHS advice is if you're not feeling well, unless you can't breathe, you've got to stay at home. If you're having trouble breathing, go to the hospital, but people need support in their home. And so there's some interesting solutions around all of that. And there's some solutions about going into the workforce, but there's a difference between extending life and quality of life. And the government isn't so interested in extending life for the sake of extending life as much as it is extending people's healthy life expectancy. And I think I had a conversation with someone on the board of trustees of NHS, and they said, you know, very bluntly, the case for prevention doesn't actually show that it saves money. You know, people still 80% of spend is still at end of life. Now, if we can compress morbidity, die with our boots on, you've got a different business case. So the government's investment has really been in and around extending healthy life expectancy, not life expectancy. There's a few topics to kick around in there.
Yeah, if I could just come back on that. I've actually recently been carrying out a piece of work where I've been chatting to a lot of medical experts just to kind of like get their take on it. And we've been trying to like develop various scenarios. One thing our model has to do is we also, as well as doing kind of like our best guess of what's going to happen over the next 20 years, we also have to try and create some really extreme scenarios to make sure in an extreme scenario world that we still have enough capital. And we have been talking about kind of like what tech is out there to really help that, and we absolutely did chat through the fact that that there is a lot happening at the moment that really is taking things that step forward. And another thing that did came up as well is completely, it's not necessarily about extending life, it is kind of about extending healthy life. But actually, if especially for quite frail people, the longer you can keep them out of hospital, then actually even just a couple of months, because actually if all our policyholders started living a couple of months longer than they are now, then actually that's the situation where actually that does cost us quite a lot of money. So even a couple of months is important. And actually I think that I think there really is a case to think that a lot of what you guys are talking about, it is going to keep people out of hospital for longer, and extending that healthy life for longer. So I think that is something we do need to be taking into account, because I think we could see that extending life even if only by a couple of months, which is something which we need to allow for.
Alessandro, what are you doing to support people in their home if they've got a diagnosis of COVID-19? Have you created a solution?
Well, the solution actually comes from also what we do not do directly, but we do indirectly. So your MD, if you want, is just a sorting hat. It's a sorting hat that points to people what they could be doing given the information that they have provided to us. And therefore, what we do, as indeed in some cases, you don't need to see a GP if you already know which chronic condition you are suffering from and you need particular help for that chronic condition. So for instance, one of our partner apps is My Sugar. It's an app that helps people with diabetes. If you already know that you have diabetes, yes, maybe you want to speak to your GP, but maybe actually you want to have a specialist services that helps you manage your chronic condition. So that is how we help both at the time when people don't know what their problem is and they are worried about it, and therefore they're thinking, should I talk to the GP or not talk to the GP to understand what it is? But also we help people that know what the problem is. It's just they don't know which provider to choose or which health professional to choose to find a solution that is relevant for them.
I had a question to me earlier, and this is probably for Peter and Bruce, but does cognitive impairment have a relationship to our vulnerability to COVID-19? Are we seeing a higher incidence of COVID-19 bad reactions in people with cognitive impairment?
Well, we're certainly seeing the rise in care homes where, so I don't know if the link is cognition, but obviously age and condition is. We're seeing that. We're taking a slightly different approach. In the next couple of weeks, we're launching an app for socially isolating elderly. And that's with just really simple games, but also games based on geolocation. So if you're from, my wife's family's from Huttnall, so there'll be, if you download the app in Huttnall or Nottingham, you'll get some games about Nottingham and Huttnall. So just trying to delight a little bit of those who are socially isolated. And for us, the way we see this in our interviews with many elderly is this, we call it a new normal. It's the old normal for them. That social isolation is not new, sadly. And we're partnered with a charity here called Hospice, who see they're going to run clinical trials on our apps to show that we can improve, hopefully, that we can improve the lives of dementia patients and carers. But what we're seeing is that it's not just dementia where this kind of loneliness, the social isolation impacts quality of life. So we're hoping to help a broad spectrum. And again, helping today, not 3, 5, 10 years when Big Pharma jumps in.
Are you seeing anything, Dexter?
So we've switched all of our clinics to remote via telephone or by video if possible, and the carers have really been struggling a lot with the lockdown. And so in this case, you repeatedly are being questioned as to why can't we go out, why can't we do this, or when they go out, why are you telling me not to touch people and go this way or that way? It's actually really, a lot of them are burnt out already. It's really, really been a big challenge, and I think the challenging behavior management is the thing that's been really difficult. So even people that don't have COVID, it's the ones that those are the people that have been struggling the most.
Tomer, I don't know what you're seeing from your community. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Someone else.
Sorry, no, that's absolutely fine. I was about to say we've got about 5 minutes left, really. So I was going to say if anyone had any further comments on that, and then perhaps I was going to sort of invite Tomer and Paul to maybe share their sort of final thoughts or last questions for the group before I finish close. But yeah, Tomer, what have you been seeing over in Israel?
Sorry, so you want to finalize now?
Well, I think Eric had just asked as to what the situation's been over in Israel on that point in terms of, I guess, the care community and over there. But I was going to say then we've got sort of 5 minutes left. So I thought maybe to answer that question and then I guess any summary comments or questions to the group for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, so just another point on that. So definitely we're seeing changes, and I think that during the last period, so also the companies, let's say call it during COVID, so most of the companies in Israel actually have tried to penetrate the Israel market, which is something that haven't happened before, because until then, they haven't looked at Israel at all. They looked outside because Israel, it's such a small market and it's regulated and there's the bureaucrats. So they didn't do anything within the market. But during COVID, so it kind of shifted, meaning that they tried mainly penetrating the Israeli market. But this is something of interest, I think, of the recent period, because the companies that actually started in Israel will stay there, meaning that if the technology is already implemented, it will stay. And also it's a good beta site when they're going outside of Israel, meaning that once they have an approved product within the Israeli healthcare system with an application for COVID or something that can be also relevant for post-COVID situation, it can be also applicable and have the validation when they want to go outside of Israel. So this is actually also to connect it for the summary. So this is also something that in Israel, this is also the uniqueness because it's such a small market. So from day one, Israeli companies, Israeli technologies are always looking on the outside. And actually, Bruce, the technology that you referenced earlier regarding the AI and emotion, they actually targeting first Japan market, because people there are working a lot and they really need that extra tool to monitor their emotion and their anxiety, that they wouldn't be going to for burnout and suicides and depression is very high ratio in Japan. So they targeted Japan. So this is something interesting in Israel to see that they're trying to adapt from day one their solution to the specific market. And it's not conventional that their first market should be the US or Germany or UK, but really trying to figure out exactly the market that can fit their product. And also to add additional thing, I think that the roundtable here was really amazing. So thank you, Josh, for the initiative. Thank you all for participating. You had very good ideas. I think that we're going on a very good direction regarding the implementation of technologies, of more innovative technologies that we're used to. We still have a long way of adaptation. And really, once we will pass that bar, I think that really we can achieve much healthier lifestyle, going towards the prevention route. And that will actually affect us in several areas. Also with the insurance, the insurance, also the way that we're taking on healthcare from the healthcare facilities, and also as a consumer, as a patient.
Fantastic, thanks, Tom. And Paul, I guess, what have your thoughts been? It's a lot of different sort of comments and questions have been thrown around, but I guess what were your sort of summaries of today's roundtable?
Yeah, I mean, really interesting hour, and in fact, it feels like we've touched on some of the really positive stuff that happened, also some of the barriers. One of the things that I think is really great about this industry is the sort of the collaboration and the working together and innovating together, and of course, Eric, organisations like Aging 2.0 are kind of fundamental part on that. I suppose just as sort of parting piece on behalf of PwC. I mean, I think there's a lot we can still do, and I think that it's some good news. I mean, we worked on a project recently where we helped, I probably shouldn't name them, but a bank use AI and data to look at who are their regular customers that used to come into branch pre-COVID at a kind of regular time. Those are the people where that was kind of their outing, that was their social interaction, and with COVID they couldn't. And they organised for mobile phones to be sent to those individuals so they can access banking and still do their finances. What I don't know is whether those phones were preloaded with some of the technologies that you guys are talking about to help with sort of social isolating. So I suppose to the extent that we're a good bridge into financial and other sectors, if there's anything more PwC can be doing to kind of form those links, then I'd be delighted to do that. And I certainly observe corporates more broadly. Purpose is just a bigger part of what they do now, and what could be more closer to purpose than looking after the kind of well-being of their customers and the people that buy their products. So I'm really excited, and thank you all for your participation. I think it was a really good sort of summary actually of where kind of things are at.
Fantastic. It seems Alessandro might have a little comment as well, perhaps, or were you just waving thanks? Oh, fantastic. Yeah, well, a huge thank you to Toma as our host, and to Paul and PwC as one of our hosts and sponsors of the Longevity Leaders Congress. Thanks all for your support of joining us in this unusual circumstances in a virtual event. Invite you to rejoin the rest of the conference that's taking place the rest of the afternoon. Thank you all for joining us, and see you a little later on. And yeah, use the one-to-one meeting platform as well if you wanted to follow up on any of the conversations today. So thanks very much.